Welcome to this Business Central launch event and this session about extending e-documents with new interfaces. Today I will talk to you about the technical updates for building integrations with the e-document framework that are released in 2025 Wave 1, also known as version 26. This session is especially relevant to you if you want to build a connector and haven't done that yet with the e-document framework, but also especially if you have built a connector, maybe even released it already, then this session is really good to watch. I also want to recommend watching our previous BCLE sessions on what's new in e-documents, that is for release 2024, Wave 1 and Wave 2, because those sessions are more in depth. They both cover the high-level aspects, but also the technical bits in greater detail than what we will do in today's session. Today's session I will be going mainly into the updates and what you need to be aware of with the new releases of these interfaces. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So the framework before this release had one integration interface that you would need to implement when you build a connector. So this interface had two main functions: for sending and receiving e-documents and for approval and cancellation actions for sent e-documents. But why are we doing these changes? Well, there were some challenges in the existing model that we first released. First of all, we didn't have any proper error handling when doing the receiving logic in the framework. And that will mean that if you, for instance, were trying to reach a service that is currently unavailable, we wouldn't be able to handle the framework logic properly. Then we also had some incomplete integration design that we wanted to improve. Currently, in the old version, it was patched with some is-handled events that we dislike this approach and we want to get rid of for the e-document framework. And then, of course, also from feedback, there were partners that we talked with that told us that there are lack of support for more advanced connector scenarios, and they would like to see those improvements for their connectors. So from the last few months, where we've done a lot of partner collaboration with the new connectors we're shipping and the feedback through Yammer and other sources, we decided that, okay, this wave is a good time to re-engineer this part of the framework. So, question, what is it actually then we need to solve? Well, first of all, we would like to protect against if an integration service is down, right? We want to remain in control in the framework, in the process. We want to remain in control there and not put the e-document in a state that is unexpected. And we also want to make sure that if somehow there are some broken logic in the connector, then we also want to take into account of keeping the state in the framework. Then, of course, we want to improve the design and quality of these interfaces now that we're changing them, specifically decrease the work that is needed by an implementer, making it more simple, and then improving the capabilities that these interfaces gives connectors out of the box. Yeah, and then, of course, we also want to get rid of these patches of is-handled events that we had to add in, such that we also get rid of these problems with cross-implementation, where if one bad connector gets installed that doesn't handle these events properly, it affects other connectors and so on. So the solution, or the answer to that, is essentially what is new in this release, because we are providing now 5 new interfaces. And don't worry, it is not meant to scare you that there are 5, because 4 of them, the first 4 is what is the equivalent to the old e-document integration in terms of capabilities. They are just improved, and then they're separated to make each interface more simple to work with, and also separate the concerns when building the application, making it simpler for the developer. So this is an improved API design with simplified logic, both in the framework, but also in the connectors. And then we added this iDocument Action interface as a way of standardizing document actions. And what do I mean by that? Well, some connectors might want to do specific calls to their service, do specific actions, and we want to give you that opportunity without having to deal with state management in the e-document framework. So we provide this interface where you can implement a custom action, just focus on the logic for sending to your service and passing the response, and then we will deal with updating the document and all the state accordingly. This is, of course, already updated in our current connectors. Pagero and Avalara is updated, and the new ones, Logic and Signup, that we're shipping in this release, have also been using these new interfaces, so that we've already had them through partners that have worked with them and gotten feedback, which is really good. So let's dive into in a little bit more detail how this looks, so you really get an understanding of the difference between version 25 and version 26. So in version 25, we had the eDocument integration interface that your code unit would implement. In the new version, for sending specifically, you implement the iDocument Sender. And the iDocument Sender has the same parameters as before, with the exception of the send context code unit that is now provided as the third parameter. And this one is just a wrapper for the HTTP response and request information, as well as any data that you want to send. And as we can see here in the example from Avalara I have with me today, we are reading out the template from the send context that is provided by the framework in my implementation. And then I'm sending it off to Avalara, getting back the response and storing that document ID that they assigned me. Then we have sending with asynchronous responses. Beforehand, in the old version, again, in the eDocument integration interface, this was a parameter async. Now, instead, we've changed it to be a new interface that you can optionally implement. It's called iDocument Response Handler. And if you implement this one for your solution, then you will be using asynchronous communication. And what specifically do I mean with asynchronous in this case? Just to remind you, it is when you send a document to a service, and then they are going to process that document, verify that the contents are okay. Then you send another request to ask, basically verify what I send, is it okay? And as you can see here, it is the GetResponse method that you will be implementing. It has the same parameters as the send. And the example from Avalara is quite straightforward. I just create a request, I send it off, and then I exit the Boolean true or false. True if it is actually processed by the server and is okay, or false if they're still continuing to process, or throwing an error in case that the server comes back and says that there is an error in the document you sent, such that we can handle that in the framework accordingly. So sending is very similar to what it was before. We have bigger changes in receiving. Still, they're quite simple to migrate, but these changes are bigger. So in version 25, we had the receive document and get document count in batch as functions in the interface. And then we had to throw in this isHandled event called onAfter insert imported document for you to go fetch the XML from the server and attach it to the eDocument. And this was not exactly what we wanted, or it was something that was the first version at least. And now in the new version, we have this only handled by the interface. So we have two functions that you will implement in the iDocument receiver. One of them is called receive documents, and the other one is called download document. And there is no need for isHandled events here. To see how it looks, let's start with the receive documents. So in iDocument receiver, you get the service that you want to receive for, then a template list. So that is a list that you need to fill out with the documents that you get from the service that you are to receive. And these will contain metadata about the documents. And then a receive context, the variable which is the same as before, HTTP response and request, and the data template is stored in this receive context. And as you can see from the Avalara example here, we are getting a response with new documents, and then we're iterating over them, and we are inserting the metadata for each one of them into this template list and passing it back to the framework. That will then ensure to create new eDocuments for each of these metadata objects. And that looks like this. So the download document procedure will be called for each one of these, and it will have the single template with the document metadata related to this specific e-document. And the task, as you can see here in the example, is then to take that metadata and go fetch the actual contents of the e-document. So that is the XML. That is what we're doing here, and we're then storing that in the template in the receive context. And that is passed back to the framework, and voila, then you have an e-document inside Business Central. Then we have added a new feature, or enriched the capabilities of the interfaces with I-received document marker. This one is to acknowledge that you received something. Some services allow you to send a request saying, I received this document, so don't send it to me again, essentially. And this is, if you again implement this interface, it's optional, then you have the ability to turn that on in your connector and tell the service that you had received a document. So essentially, your code unit can choose to implement it or not, depending on your use case. So the key benefits of this is, of course, the improved API design and this separation of concerns, where we have smaller pieces of interfaces that each deal with different smaller problems. It simplifies the logic, both in the connectors, but also for us in the framework. It is also safe, because now we actually catch errors when HTTP communication fails on the receiving side, so that we can continue the receiving process as we intended to do. It is all explicit implementation. There are no event subscribers, essentially allowing for multiple connectors to be installed without this worry of one connector doing a bad job of its implementation and affecting the rest. We've seen that, and that is feedback we've gotten. So it's good to see that this improvement will get rid of it. Yeah, and then also with some of the new interfaces, you can build more advanced connectors. And then the final thing, the standardized document actions. Again, focus on writing the logic for sending the request and passing it back, and let the framework handle all the state updates. You just give it the necessary information, and our framework will then take care of that and make sure that it's the same user experience across connectors. So what are the next steps for you? Right, so now we have these new interfaces. They're available from this release. The old interfaces are deprecated and will be removed in 3 waves. So that is 2026, wave 2. Migration to the new ones is simple, luckily, and you can follow the new and improved documentation we've made available on Microsoft Learn. Just follow the link here in the, you can find it on Microsoft Learn. It's called Extending the eDocuments functionality. Another advice I think you should take with you is also to use the existing connectors to help you build your own. Because now we have 4 examples and more to come. They are all available on AL App Extensions, and you can find them under eDocument connectors, and then they will be folder-based for each of them. And here you can go and take inspiration and see how different connectors does it. And that is essentially everything for me in this session about the new and improved interfaces. Thank you for watching.